So we're recording.
So Lau,
Yes, sir.
we often refer to the third member of our little trifecta here as the adult in the room. She gives us structure, she gives us directions, she tells us where to go and where to sit and everything. And I think it would be very, very beneficial for our audience to understand who she is and how she got, what happened in her life. What happened to her fate to have put her in this position right now? I mean, maybe it's a good thing and maybe it's a horrible thing. We'll find out later.
Confession is good for the soul. What purgatory led you for this to be your bardo?
So this is Arorah. Arorah, please talk.
All right, I love that you're directing now. Please talk, just say anything about yourself. Well, it's so funny because you guys have talked a lot about yourself because you've told your stories over, and I've interviewed Lau, I've talked with you, Arthur, about your story. So I actually haven't told my story, really, I don't think at all, in terms of, what really brought me to Taoism and the kind of Taoism that I practice. So, but what got me to you guys was, absolute fate. In terms of Lau, I'll put it this way: there was a student which shall not be named who brought us together, and she actually reached out to me and wanted to learn from me. And then I went out to Houston and gave a workshop out there, and that's when I met Lau. And I would just say it was total love at first sight. Never met anybody who got me so quickly, and just felt such a deep, soulful connection with him. And I can talk a little bit more about what those workshops were and what that was about, but that's what got me to Lau. And then from then on, just such a deep connection, somebody that I could always call whenever I was having a difficult day. The type of Taoism that I practice has some, ups and downs to it. And so it's nice to have somebody who is both oh, shut up, Lau. You are so in trouble. All right, I'm done then. Thank you very much for interviewing me.
Why would you do that to her? She was in the role.
I can't look. Why is it wet when it rains, man? Nature's nature. I can't. Allows that allows a dog, man. I can't.
I am actually blushing right now. This is it's
All
hard
right,
to
let's
talk
go
about
back.
myself,
Let's skip over this particular period of life, and let's go back to where it all started. How did you become on the path of spirituality? How did you become on the path of a seeker? I know you also wrote your book, which has a lot of spirituality and a lot of different spiritual people. You're quoting a lot of different spiritual people, which obviously you've studied, you've met, you've thought about, if you remember their quotes, right? And it had an impact on you. Why? I mean, most people don't bother with this stuff. Most people aren't interested. Most people are very content not to look for anything else. What made you look for something?
Wow, that's a really, really good question. I think that I'm going to do a little bit of what you guys did, is just to go back to the beginning, and I realized I was born in a way, I was born the middle child of 5 daughters. My father was in the military. I was born in Alabama. We lived there for like 3 months, then moved to Texas, then moved out to Utah. And I was born in quite a religious family. And, but one of the things that happened really early on is my father went to Korea. I was just barely maybe a year old. My father went to the war in Korea for a year. And then my mother had a miscarriage. And so when I was about like 6 to 8 months old, I lost both of my parents in terms of they were gone in my life. I believe that had an effect on me in terms of bonding. We talk about how important it is to bond and have someone to bond to. And when you're really young, if you don't, then it makes it harder to bond, I think, to other people. So I think that was one of the biggest events that happened. Another thing that happened for me, I'll give you three things, okay? The other is that when I started school, I that was the year my mother had been pregnant, and she had this baby was born, but she died like 18 hours after. So she would have been my sixth sister. And there were things that were happening in my family's life. It's very interesting because that was also the year that JFK got assassinated. And it's interesting because astrologically and energetically right now, that's what's happening in the world right now is a lot of this sort of stuff.
I haven't noticed anything.
What's that?
I hadn't noticed anything happening.
I know, it's very calm.
No barbarians were knocking on my door.
So at any rate, she ended up in the hospital, and she became a Valium addict for a while. She was able to get herself off of it, but that also really affected me. It actually really affected me at school. I was very shy, painfully shy, and had a very difficult time making friends. So I really, the way I survived was just to really go within. And in my family, it was not a place. So this is my third story. It wasn't a place where there was a lot of support, in terms of, there was a lot going on in my family, in terms of just energetics of a family. So it wasn't like I felt like I even had an ally there. I was more like, I'm just going to hide. I'm going to just have my own little life. Became, had a very like full fantasy life, in terms of, I think that's partly why I liked acting. I like to look at characters. I'd like to read books that had characters in it. I'd like to go to movies, so that there was a lot of things around that. And I did a lot of acting too. We used to put on plays, write plays and put them on, and people would come and we'd share, it'd be 5 cents and you'd get a, popcorn. But anyway, when I was about 15, and this has to do with my spiritual thoughts at the time. So growing up, I was really afraid that I wasn't perfect enough and I wasn't going to make it like everyone in my family. So it was like, and there were certain teachings there that had to do with like outer darkness, you won't be with your family, and so I knew that I actually was really, sweet little girl, to tell you the truth. I was really good. But of course, I couldn't seem to live up to this standard. So this one Christmas, I went to my mom and I said, because the most important thing in my life at that time was Christmas. Like I loved Christmas, getting presents, all of that. It was really big. And I said, I know there's not a Santa Claus. So I'd like to give my Christmas away to someone. And this was going to be my big, this was going to be my Calvary, this was going to be like my big sacrifice, like I'm going to put myself on the cross. I'm going to get, but it was in my mind, it was like the biggest thing that I could do to show God that I was a good person and that I, could, get the ticket to heaven. So anyway, what happened was, my mother gave me money. I bought the gifts. We went to this woman's house. It was an anonymous person. It was an older woman. I didn't really even know her. I put the gifts on her doorstep. I got into the car and all the family was in the car and no one said anything. No one said, Cindy, we're proud of you, or, no one said anything. And then I thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this. Like, I'm really hoping that I've got gifts tomorrow under the tree. I really feel so depressed right now. I hate this. I hate how I feel. My Christmas is gone. I've got nothing to look forward to. So I'm praying that maybe my parents would have gotten me some gifts. Now you think most parents would sort of do that. But that's not what happened. What happened was the next morning, I woke up with all my sisters. There's all 5 of us. We go into the living room, and everybody's got gifts except for me. Okay. Now, I'm going to try not to cry even to talk about this, because it just brings up this, like, this part of me that, just wasn't seen. And so I remember I'm sitting on the couch and everybody's opening up their gifts. They're all excited. And I'm trying not to cry, just like now. And my sister looks at me and she says, "Cindy, what's the matter with you? You look like you're going to cry." And I just, at that moment, I thought, wow, like, I'm here. No one sees that I don't have any presents. Nobody sees anything that I just did, that I just gave away my Christmas. And boy, wow. What does all this family mean? And so at that moment, I didn't realize it back then, but at that moment I said, "God, you and I are over. Like, whatever it is, like, we're done. And family, you and I are over." And I didn't realize that was exactly what happened. But at that point, it was like, I just didn't connect. And then I'll just fast forward. I ended up marrying a person who was in this church, a really wonderful man. I have a theory is that you should only marry people that you would feel comfortable divorcing, because you never really know somebody until after you've actually broken up with them, because we all, but but what ended up happening is I became bulimic, trying to be this perfect person. And that really was very hard. And that was, I went to treatment for that, and have been in 12-step programs for that, and recovered around 1989. But at that time, I really, he was a scholar. We actually moved to Boston. He went to the divinity school here. He was a scholar. And so I would say that's when I became a feminist, and that's when I really left the church. I started looking at a lot of it, didn't believe some of it. So at any rate, that set me on an incredible journey to, for number one, I never thought that I had any rights as a woman. I came from a very patriarchal background, and so just having a voice, like getting a voice. I used to just talk really, really quiet, and now, I have this sort of booming voice that came from that. And so I went to a lot of different churches, spiritual teachers. I would stay about 3 years, and then I'd move on. And I think one of the things I found about every place I went was eventually I found the fraud in it, because I think that there's just fraud everywhere. But I think we're all frauds in a certain way, right? And so then fast forward to a relationship that I had with another really wonderful man, but he was a sex addict. He was a porn addict, and I didn't know it to begin with, but I didn't know, and I didn't know how that affected a relationship. But it was really, really, it was one of those things that I've never sort of prayed to get out of a relationship before. But I really prayed to get out of this, because I was also like hooked in and addicted to him. When I was able finally to leave that, and that took me about 3 years, I really seriously went into this. I hadn't really meditated. I'd done different other things, but not really meditated. So I went on this 17-day meditation retreat with this particular style of meditation. And when I got back, there were a number of things that had changed. I mean, I really basically meditated for 17 days straight, like the whole time. That I wasn't like, we weren't in a group, but like the whole time, like day and night. When I got home a week later, I was with a friend that was also doing these meditations. We were out in nature, and all of a sudden I popped open, like I popped awake. And the trees and I was like, I felt such ecstasy. I never felt that happy in my life. And the trees were like on fire. It was like the whole world. It was like something that I remember reading somewhere, like, oh, must be what they're talking about. and that lasted for probably a good 45 minutes, maybe. But then there was this thought that I had in my head is like, well, if I stay in this like this altered state, this state where I'm just like so happy, I don't give a shit about anything. Like, I don't care, like all the goals that I have and all the things that I wanted to do, I don't care about them. I'll just want to stay here because it's so great. It's so wonderful. And then this person that I was with, this guy, he said something to me that really affected my self-image and my ego. And I crashed. I crashed so hard. I just like almost got depressed after that. But that was a moment where I thought, wow, there's something to this. There's really something to this meditation. And so at any rate, I realized that I still had too big of an ego to really like be able to like function in, like a real spiritual life and work that out. So then the way I ended up meeting Lao really starts with the next part. I found a book, it just sort of dropped in my lap one day, of a teacher who worked with sexual alchemy. And I had been looking into that for quite some time. I became a yoga teacher. I got into yoga. And anyway, this book really fascinated me. I hunted down the teacher and I started working with him. And I learned a massage method. I learned a lot of things about sexuality and how to work with that energy. And when I started to do this, talk about moving into your nature, the first massage I ever gave, it was like, I know how to do this. I've done this before. It was like remembering, and when I think of Taoism, I always feel like I'm just remembering it. Like I have images of, being on the mountain somewhere, not a female, but more male. And just, just have memories of it. But at any rate, I ended up with this teacher who I still really love. It's just like, you never stop loving people. But I ended up really feeling that I needed to leave his fold. I didn't feel right about how he was, what he was creating. It didn't feel like it was right for me. And so I was working with some people who really sort of helped me with like the spiritual aspects of things. And I had to actually publicly rescind my vows, which was really hard because on the day that I took my vows with him was probably the happiest day of my life. And working with him was probably some of the happiest times that I had experienced. But I knew that, I knew that it finally wasn't right for me. And so we had a meeting and I stood up after it and rescinded my vows. And I had a lot of preparation to do that. It was very hard to do it publicly. And even that I would even humiliate him. I gave a gift. There were all these like things that I did with it, but I needed to free my soul from his. But I will always be very, very grateful because he put me on this path. And so this path that I'm on right now, in terms of what I do in massage is, I have a sexual qigong practice. I call it, it's a sexual healing practice. And on some level, it's really healed many, many parts of me, especially, around that relationship that I was with somebody who was a sex addict and really understanding what sexuality is, really learning how to take people to a place that they didn't know that their body could go to. It's been healing for me. And that was how I met Lao, because I came and did a workshop for some women in Houston, really, really lovely people. And then that's when I met Lao. And so with my practices, Lao he's also initiated me into his teachings. and just been, you know, one of those people that I just know always has my back, you know, in the kind of unusual world that I live in. When I left my teacher, I also didn't really have a lot of peers. And, you know, we really need to have peers. It's just one of the things that we need. Didn't think I was going to get emotional, but I am talking about it. So then, Lau talked to me about Arthur and said, you need to meet this person. And and, you know, come and join us in these podcasts. So I met with you, Arthur, one evening, and the first thing I said to Lau, because I'm in Boston and you're in Boston, and I said, how could you hold out on me? There's another Taoist here. How could you hold out on me? So then I went and met Arthur. We took a walk, and I was just like, whoa, like, this is amazing. You know, such a dynamic man, and what you've been through. And then I read your book, Outlast, which I just love, and it really inspired me in so many ways. And then Arthur and I talked, and you know, we just had a little talk yesterday, which, you know, just really changed my world. So I feel like I'm in like amazing company. It's like, who would not want to be here talking to you guys about, you know, your world, your life. I don't think that there's anything that I could say to either of you that I would feel judged about, or that you guys wouldn't have like some great, you know, experience to share. And that's what I love about both of you. Like you guys have taken your licks, you know, you've lived a life, you've had to deal with, you know, loss and your own sexuality in different ways. And so, you know, I just feel like, you know, I can be really honest with you both. And so that's really all I have to say. I guess didn't know that's where I'd go with it all, but yeah.
I have a question. If you're in a place where you can answer questions.
Okay.
Okay, growing up, there was a point when you drew the line, you were done with your family, you were done with God. What kept you going forward with your faith? Why did you stay there? If you're done with your family and God, and your faith is very much family and God centric, how did that, is it you still needed a tribe, and that was the one available, that was the one you knew, or what kept you in that particular?
Yeah, I was looking for a tribe, and what I really found is that I'm on my own pathless path, kind of, you know, that every time I tried to get into, you know, something, you know, it would just be like, you know, it's like what is it called when you get something? What's that?
Acupuncture?
Not acupuncture. I just had this like analogy. I can't think of what it's called. When you get something, when a piece of wood goes into you, what's it called?
Splinter.
A splinter, yeah. So like, you know how a splinter goes in, but then your skin just kind of works its way out, right? I feel like that's how it was with religion, and that's why Taoism appealed to me so much, because it was something that, first of all, like, I have to say, I'm very eclectic. It's like more is more for me. So, I mean, I really love all religions. I love studying them. I love learning about anything. If I meet somebody from a religion, I want to hear everything. There's nothing in me that says you've got to believe this. And that's what I think growing up was really hard, was that it's like, no, we're the only truth. And it's just like, even as a child, I was like, how could that possibly be? Like, there's just like a world, even though I was so small. But that's a good question. I think what kept me is my Shan, you know, like that part of me that somehow, you know, in a certain way, like, I don't really need anyone to believe the same as I believe. I really just have never felt that. But I've also needed to have the freedom to believe the way I believe. And so on a certain level, I just, like even with my family now, I'm very close to them. There's been so much healing with them where we're not the same at all. It almost seems like, where did this person come from? I envy them for just their own being able to have the faith the way they have it. But they accept me and I accept them. And I think religion, what I've noticed is when people join a religion, it's just like falling in love. You fall in love, and you could point all sorts of things out to them, like they're, like, well, I think this, lover might be cheating on you, or I think that, but if they're so in love, it's like, why tell them anything that would affect them? It was just, you would just, disturb their shun. So it's been very disappointing to have a lot of people disappoint me, and have a lot of things disappoint me. But but I think that there's just this indomitable spirit in me that's just like, okay, I'll fall down 10 times and we get up 11. But I think also that there's a certain point where I just learned really to trust myself and trust my instinct and trust my intuition. And if it doesn't meet with somebody else's, I can always call you, Lau. I can always call you, Arthur. And just, kind of work that out, because the world wants to change us. I mean, that's really its job, right?
So it's interesting in Taoism, and it's got to be a couple millennia, maybe 2,500, 3,000 years old. It's typical that you'll find, you can almost pick out a Taoist, like in behavioral psychology, developmental psychology. If a mom's got 5 kids or 3 kids or whatever, the ones that the farthest away getting into everything, they're probably very, very liberal in their way of looking at the world. But the ones that are holding on to mom's knee and doesn't want to leave that, they'll be very conservative, right? You can see these tendencies.
Right,
It's not a political thing, it's a wiring thing. Taoists have something very similar. Confucians are very collectivist, they're very thinking, and I'm a cog in a machine. I'm only as useful as the machine. If I don't perform for the machine, I don't belong. I'm a misfit, right? But Taoists, we're never born to the tribe that we actually belong to.
Yeah.
You're never born. Like,
it's actually pride in being a misfit in a way.
That's like, for example, we'll say post-Confucian time, right? So you're born into a family. Your family name comes before your name in that society, right? So it's the family's name is Chun, you're Chun Li, you're Chun Ho, whatever. Okay, so if a person wanted to study Taoism, you weren't born to Taoist predominantly. You were, because Taoists typically don't go and do the whole familial thing necessarily. And if they do, you wouldn't really know it. They don't really live within their society, right? So a Taoist, if somebody was like, I just feel really called to follow the Tao. I can't do the walk 15 steps a day on this day of the year because Confucius said that was what was pious to heaven. Like, he couldn't. And Confucianism was based off of Taoist thought. For example, Confucius, all of China was Taoist before Confucius, right? They just thought that way. And so it was like, okay, so if heaven is yang and earth is yin, and men are yang and women are yin, then if heaven's above earth, men are above women, right? That's a Confucius way of thinking. It's like, if X, then Y. And Taoists are like, oh, Jesus, please stop talking. That's not how that works at all. But you can't tell them that, because they were having the warring kingdoms period. They had the things. If they didn't put that type of societal structure, they were just going to kill themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Utility's there, but the fact of the matter is it subverts a very different way of looking and going, well, this is what we've always believed. It's like, no, you just literally put some bullshit arbitrary things. And if the emperor's a dude, he's like, seems legit to me. Men are above women. Okay, fine. But for Taoists, it's like, yeah, that's not how that works. And so if you got a hold of some Taoist teachings, whatever, which they always tried to burn Taoist teachings so they wouldn't infect the good people of Confucian land. So then you would say, well, I don't want to be part of this. I don't fit. My dad's a rice farmer, a rice miller, and I don't give a shit about rice. I'm just not a rice guy. I'm thinking more about drinking baijiu and writing poetry. It's like, you're a shame to this family. It's like, well, duh. So you would leave and you would tell your family, I'm the fuck out, which was not a big, I mean, it's not like something you just do. And so you would basically say, I'm done with God, I'm done with family. You draw a line and then you start walking. Now you would walk out of your, you know, they didn't live in like little apartments, they lived in big, you know, familial estates. You have to walk through. They would throw shit at you, tomatoes, lettuce, sour milk. They would cast, and you were allowed to take your clothes. You had basically just bare minimum under stuff to stay decent. And then they stripped your family name. So when you left your house, you were literally, you're done. And then you didn't even have a family name. So that when you showed up at the Taoist temple, they never ask you who you are because they know you're he or she without a name. And that's like, if you can think of the worst racial, ethnic slur, misogynistic slur, those are still compliments compared to what it means to be he or she without a name. It means you fucked over your family, your country, your belief. You fucked over everyone. All right? Go serve a Muslim country pig that's wrapped in the blood of Jews. It sounds like it's being very inflammatory, but still nicer than what that meant. And so they showed up, and they were like, going in. And then you basically sit there. Now think about humiliated. Think about how stripped. So nobody showed up at that door who was half-ass in, half-ass out, because you had to get some real skin in the game, which is why people became very committed to like, and then the Taoists would just be like, so I guess you could start cleaning the kitchen or something. And then you would end up meeting different teachers, and then somebody would be assigned to you, but eventually you'd make your connection with the teacher that was sort of compatible, and the abbot would generally be a really good judge of that. And then you would stay with that person, and then they would give you what they call a true name. It's basically something that because you don't have a chain name, so they got to give you something. So they'll call you, Wandering Rainbow or some shit, or some crazy ass name, and it would be like your name until you got your priest name, which would be now you're a part of the tribe. But there's always this sort of, and it's hard, and I lived under it in the temple growing up, is that if you don't conform, get the fuck out. Now, not conform as in do what we say or believe what we believe, but conform as in you've got to go all the way through this. There's no half in, half out of this shit. It's not like I'm going to learn the 5 elements, but I'm going to pretend and still live like a fucking Confucian. No, you're either in or you're out. And if you're out, you're back to being without a name and you have no one. And I mean, that's like worse than being a samana in India. I mean, it's really bad. And so Taoists, and then you get these people. And for all the times that I've spent with Taoists in main temples, which there are not a lot of real Taoists, there's more Chinese state actors, but the small little hermitages and all, you still find it. These people are like, I didn't realize that I had to do all that to get to my real family. But now you love your family so much because you know you're just as crazy as mine. Your crazy matches my crazy. And it just gets, and it becomes a thing, right? And this is why when Taoists get together like this, real Taoists anyways, not ones that want to package Tao, put a TM after it, patent it, and sell it at $400. Oh, I gotta stop. But this is why Tao.
Judgment, I can see.
So Lau, if I may just add very quickly, because it's an unbelievably wonderful story to tell. First, Arorah, thank you so much. I mean, my deepest gratitude for you opening up, for you sharing, and most importantly, for you being here. I personally feel very honored. I'm not going to speak for Lau, but we personally feel very honored that you're here with us. And you add an incredible component. Truly, without you, this would be very, very difficult. Lau, but one thing I wanted to add, just something that I kept thinking about, and you literally told us an incredible story about, is that with spirituality, in historically, there has been this enormous barrier to entry, right? You had to literally give up everything without the concept of gaining anything, right? You don't know whether the temple will accept you. You don't know whether you'll make it there. Before you could even get anywhere, you had to give up everything, right? And in today's world, there is no entry, there's no barrier to entry. Anybody can pick up an app. Anybody can, Google online, what is this person thinking and everything. I'll follow this person, get a few quotes, and I got it, right? So in my mind, in the West, that is one of the biggest issues that I see with the spiritual culture that they're trying to achieve is there's no skin in the game, literally, none at all.
That reminds me, and I know like you like Jordan Peterson as I do too, Lau, but one of his quotes is, there are some games that you can only play if you're all in. And I just have to say, with alchemy, that's definitely one of those games. But also, when so I'm doing sexual work. I'm doing sexual healing, on people, on men, and completely, that would be anathema to my family. So I've lived two lives, my outer life and my inner life. And this is really probably me coming out in my outer life, in my inner life, in terms of just saying that I have had to have those two. I have best friends that don't know what I do, because it would be disruptive to them. And it's, but I have everybody who's really close to me, does know. I have probably, in terms of the people that are really close to me, I probably have about 5 people that know.
Not more now.
And well, I have, and then you two. I'm just talking about the people that have been in my past that I've been able to really share things with, which is really nice that to have even that many people. But it is not easy living a life where there's part of it that you really can't share with others, because either you'd be judged. So much of our sexuality is misused and misunderstood, and so. But I also wouldn't want to hurt people, that I love, that would be totally upset, So, maybe one day they'll find out. I don't know. I've been a pretty crazy person in my family, in terms of just being that no one could really figure out what was going on with me. Certainly having gone to treatment for, an eating disorder, having had to, really look at 12-step programs, which I just started one for media addicts. We just started one the last couple of years and just launched that. Because I think media is probably the biggest, fastest growing addiction right now. But also, living, I guess what I'm saying is I live in a lot of different worlds. I've been in a lot of different places, and there are things I can say in certain places that I can't say somewhere else. And so.
Camouflage.
Yeah, I camouflage. That's right.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
and I love that term. We're going to have a whole,
Let me quickly share a story with you, and because I know exactly how you feel. I mean, not exactly how you feel, but I can hope to understand that. When I first got into the Taoist temple, it coincided with me starting to date my wife, and I proposed pretty quickly on the second or third date. So I knew we were getting married and everything.
The second or third date?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh my gosh.
She was, she was great. Anyways, I mean,
that's awesome. I can't wait to meet her.
Anyways, and I remember being very excited about Tao, because for the first time it felt like I literally had people I can talk to. That was literally the first time in my life that I knew if they might make fun of me, but it'd be in a fun way, in jest, not in a destructive way. So I was very excited, and I was telling my soon to be father-in-law about what I was going to be studying and what it was all about and everything. And he turns to me and he says, "Well, it sounds like you're going to become a parasite."
A parasite?
Yeah.
Wow.
Right? That's the common man's reaction to Tao. That's the everyday person's reaction because they so. I'll give you a second story, and I'll be done really quickly with this.
But I'm not even 100% sure I understand what he meant by parasite. Like you're just going to live off other people.
Right. He thinks that I would become a parasite of society, that I would literally mooch off society, and I would go on to create 500 jobs for people. So I'm not sure who the parasite is, you know, the one who's living on Social Security or the one who's creating 500 jobs, but we won't talk about that. But the other one was I was looking for a translator in China, and one the woman who came to me, very educated, very nice, and everything, and we talked a lot and everything. And she says to me, she's like, "You don't want to be doing this Tao thing." And I said, "Well, why not? I actually kind of feel like I do." She's like, "No, Confucianism is much better." And I said, "Okay, well, why do you feel that?" She says, "Because Taoism is all about manipulating other people. And it's a very ugly philosophy."
Really?
This is a true story. I mean, hand on whatever Bible or whatever you want, Tao Te Ching, whatever floats your boat. But that's my true story. I mean, I was sitting there going, "I think our dinner is over. Thanks for coming." But
Yeah, you know, every new dynasty, the first thing they did, because it was all Confucian, kill the Taoists, because Taoism is subversive to collectivism. Taoism is an individualism thing, not because Taoists can't be friends and have a collective. It's because no one can do your shit for you. It has to be you. You have to do your shit. And if you have Confucianism, you have Buddhism, you have Christianity, which I'm not disparaging any of them. And if you love your Jesus, love you some Jesus. I love me some Jesus. But the fact of the matter is, all of these other religions have expiation, has somebody to intercede on their behalf.
Yeah.
Taoism doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Socialism does, but Taoism doesn't. Taoism is like, there's reality, here's you, step before reality, and you got to take ownership of your shit.
right.
That's the thing. Now, you know, going back to something you just said, and I kind of want to segue this into the concept you guys wanted to talk about the fear as well. When you become a Taoist, and as I explained in the other story, you did it because you had real desire. You weren't doing it because you were afraid of hell. You're doing it because it was this or else. You had no choice.
That's it, right there. That's exactly right. It was this or nothing else.
But people who pick up most religion, they're not doing it, right? I sat in the jungle one time down in the Amazon with a guy. He was an amazing guy. Little lean-to shanty. It was raining. He had a coffee can that was rusty, that was filled with yage that he was giving some people there to drink, and they were going through it. And I just wanted to talk with him, and I watched people go through journeys while I just sat there watching, and like, wow, this is crazy shit. But he had just got done journeying, so he wasn't under the plant, but he was, you know, coming out, and he was sort of processing it. So I got to be there while I processed. And he said, I had a vision on my journey, and I was like, oh yeah, so tell me about that. Say that. And he's like, there's a village about 150 kilometers from here. I'm like, yeah. He's like, they're horrible people. They're horrible, horrible people. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, they do all the sweet stuff, they're all the nice words and all, but I know that they lie, that they hurt each other emotionally, that they do all these things. But that is veneer, this thin veneer of nice. He's like, I'm like, but he's like, do you know why they're nice? Do you know what the pretense of nice is? I'm like, no. He's like, because they're afraid of the boogeyman, basically, in the jungle. He's like, the devil gets more people to church than God ever did. Right? And so he's like, if somebody went and killed the best man in that village, the rest of them would become saints. Not because they believed in loving what was good or what was right, but because if the best of us can be killed by the boogeyman, we better become better. You see, so it's really just cause and effect, stimulus and response versus personal accountability that I have to do this, which is what ultimately a lot of times separates Taoists from most devout people, because they're not devout. Most people are devout to an ideology or a dogma that they really don't get. It's abstract. And you can tell this by a simple litmus test. Push on one of those dogmatic points and watch how fastly the claws come out.
Right.
I had a woman one time, we were in, I want to say we were outside of Sevastopol in Ukraine. You know, Russian Orthodox Church is still the Russian Orthodox Church. You can try to stamp that shit all you want, but it ain't being stamped out. Okay, it's been around for too long. Ever since the Rus, you know, took them over, you know, Vikings are gonna Viking. Well, I had made because this was after the former Soviet Union, so they're supposed to be atheists. And I was like, why do you guys keep these artifacts around? I mean, you don't really believe in St. Basil. I mean, come on, don't lie. And she looked at me, she's like, how dare you talk about that? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you would disparage it? I'm like, I'm not disparaging it. I'm asking the Bolshevik Revolution till now, Lenin, I mean, you guys don't really believe that. You can't. You can't have gone through the experiment that you went through and still say you believe that. They're anathema. And she said to me, you don't understand faith. I'm like, I sure the fuck don't. If this is what I'm really at a loss. And I was being sincere. She was taking nothing but that. And I said, let me ask you, would St. Basil really be that fucking offended? It seems like you have all the umbrage for him. Why is the guy who I'm sincerely asking about take no offense, and you, somebody who's never met him, don't even know he actually existed, and yet you're willing to die for him? See, it's the neophytes. And it's because, say, he'll make intercession for me. It's like, but yeah, but what do you do? She didn't dress very properly. She didn't eat very properly. She knows personal value, but she'll go to fucking death over St. Basil. Why? And the answer is, she's not doing it because she loves. She's doing it because she.
Absolutely.
Taoism from fear, because this is the wrong place for timid people. It's just straight up. If you're a person who's like, oh, we need security and we need to give up, you're in the wrong fucking place, because there's no guardrails in Taoism. There's no safety chains. You ever walk, you know, one of the best examples of Taoism, if you want like a physical representation, there's 5 sacred mountains in China. There's Song, Hua, Tai, Hung, and Hung. Hua Mountain is the most dangerous place to visit in the earth for any tourist, because the boards are like maybe half a meter wide. They're hooked by iron staples, and mostly there's no chains. And it's on the side of a mountain that's probably easily 1,000 to 1,500 feet straight up. So you're just kind of inching along, and it's a straight goddamn drop. And what's worse is if you're walking along and you're paying attention, it shouldn't be a problem, except for the wind comes by at that altitude at hundreds of miles an hour. And there are literally people be behind you, and you look back and they're gone. They were just blown up. You never even heard them because it took their goddamn voice with them. And they're dead. Happens all the time. And yet that's a sacred Taoist mountain. And what's more important, there are a lot of Taoist temples on that mountain. They're little hermitages. I'm going to tell you, that is the best that's the best representation of Taoism. There's no safety rails.
No.
And it just takes one and you're gone. And the reason why is you got to love this. You got to be for it. You can't be doing it to try to mitigate. You got to be doing it to try to propagate. That's it. That's all there is.
You have to embrace it completely with your soul, and anything less than completely, anything less than all in results in failure, right?
Yeah.
Because you start then questioning the system, right? If the system works as a whole and you start questioning parts of it, like they don't belong here, like you take the 10 commandments and you say, fuck it, I like my neighbor's wife, and and it is what it is. Well, if you do that in Taoism, the system collapses. And you're no longer able to survive in the world. You're no longer able to be yourself.
Yeah. A lot of churches will say
we're taking like 100% responsibility for your life. And when I was growing up and I learned about, Jesus dying on the cross to take away my sins, I remember thinking, if I go into this afterlife and I didn't get any, I didn't myself grow so that I could not, have the behaviors that I find abhorrent or whatever. If I don't do it for me, somebody just coming along and wiping it clean just does not feel like, then I would never grow. I would just stay weak. I would just stay a child.
Absolutely.
Children are easy to bully. Children are easy to fool.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
he is a real child. Yeah, the first time somebody ever told me that about that story, I was pretty young, but I was at the temple at the time, and I'll never forget. I asked. It was like a vacation Bible school I got sent to because a friend of mine was like, "I'm going. Can you go with me?" And my master was like, "Yeah, you should probably do that, just to at least get it, get that through." So I went. And I remember a guy telling about how we're all fouled and we're all sinners and we're all these things. And I'm like, I keep getting told that by the teachers too, but then he said, but Jesus died for you. And I was like, and I never forget, he looked and went, and I was like, I can't pee for you. You can't eat a sandwich and be full. How does that work? And he goes, you need faith. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you still can't pee for me. I'm pretty sure I still can't eat a sandwich and you be full. I'm like, it makes no sense. If I do a crime, can you go to jail and do my time? It doesn't make any sense. And he went, there are unbelievers. I'm like, I'm one, because I just don't see how this works. And I wasn't being antagonistic. I get what the idea is. I get what the idea of having something blameless take it for you. It's just not possible. See, that's the thing with Taoism. Taoism is
Hold you
not
hostage in a certain way to that. It's like, there's there's a part of your freedom you've got to give over to be held hostage with. Now you owe.
Yeah, of
You're
course
just born and you're born in sin, and now you already owe.
Exactly, you're born in the hole. But see, Taoism doesn't, like people say, this is the one true church. Taoism's like, we aren't true at all. We're just real. This is how reality works. If something is true, it must simultaneously not be true. It has to be, because that's how reality works. It must be and not be. Particle, wave, has to be both. It can't. If it's one or the other, you already know it's bullshit. You has to be bullshit. You are both responsible for everything, and you are not responsible for anything.
The push and pull of opposites creates reality.
And this is the way.
And it's not just spiritual, it's also physical. It's also
here's the deal. If you go too far into spirituality, you fuck up your life. Go too far into materialism, you fuck up your life. The reality is it's somewhere in the middle, and it's different for everybody, but that balance is you have to find yourself.
Right. And this Taoism at its core is trying to teach you there is no spirituality and physical. It's the same thing.
Right.
That's not two. That's why the whole concept of not two. How can you have a spiritual life without physical? Who the fuck's having the spiritual life?
It's all there. It's all, the three treasures are one treasure, And that's the Trinity in Taoism, which I love. I actually.
But the thing is another thing about Taoism, and I'm not disparaging anybody, even though it may sound like I'm being a little jaded here. I'm really not. It's just human nature. I fully accept it. But people who refute it are people who are like, no, I don't want that to be true. Well, fuck what you want. It is what it is. But the fact is you can't be slovenly in the way you think or you live your life and be a Taoist. You can't. You've got to be. That's why the traditional people who become Taoists are people like, I can't buy the bullshit. I think for myself. I question everything because you can tell me, like, for example, when I was a kid, I always wanted to travel. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's a nice place. It's almost paradisical. Too small for me. I couldn't stay. I had to go. And the teacher would be like, so we're going to talk about the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about a picture. Take me there. I don't think it's real until you let me touch it, because I've been to places, I've seen the perspective of the picture, and then when I get there, it's way bigger or way smaller. And I'm like,
oh, but by the way, around the Leaning Tower of Pisa, there's so much crap. There's people hanging out and you're wading through shit and stuff like that. It's one of the worst neighborhoods. And by the time you get to the damn Pisa, you're like, I want to go home.
Right. But, but it's, as a kid, it's like, you can't tell me the reality, because what I'm going to create and what's really there are going to be so different. I'm going to feel you lied to me, even though you weren't lying. You're just telling me from your perspective. So the only way I can get truth is to experience the shit myself. If you look at 99% of religions, they don't want you to experience shit. Stay here, be afraid of this, say these words on this day at this time, kneel, stand up, get up, sit up, kneel. How come some of these religions don't have the best ass in the world with all the standing and kneeling and sitting and kneeling and standing? I mean, they should have the best ass in the world with that kind of workout.
But Lau, I mean, these religions exist for a reason, right? I mean, for the souls who come to this plane of existence, whatever you want to call it, that's what they need for them, right? For you and I, we needed something. For Arorah, she needed to have that experience of cutting her ties, basically with a knife, right? In order to move forward, right? So life gives you what you need in order to grow, if you only accept it.
Sure. But the thing is to accept it is also to accept that what you need is not what someone else needs. And that's
absolutely.
That's my whole point in this, is that one church says that we're the right one and everybody must be converted to the way we think. It's a passive act of war by saying you don't have sovereignty. We are the monopoly.
Because it makes everybody feel safe if everybody's doing the same thing and believe.
Right, but that's what happens in nature in the herd. All the zebras have to be the same, or the herd. That's why they push the sick ones to the outside so the wolves get them.
That's right.
I mean, and that's right, and that's normal, right? In the good old days, Lau and I would be burned at the stake unless we learned how to, go into a church and pray and seem genuine. Otherwise,
and burned 3 times at least by now.
But that's exactly how it is. We live in a society right now that allows us to do this.
I know.
Maybe 100, 200 years ago, even if this format existed, I don't know how much comfortable I'd feel doing this and everything.
But even though that there's not a literal burning at the stake, there's still social burnings at the stake.
Absolutely.
Oh, definitely. That's when the camouflage comes in, Arthur, to look like everyone else,
The thing is I get your concept of camouflage, but I'd like to just add a little bit to that, is that you have to remember, though, it's contextual anyways. Even if you did need to camouflage, you're not going to go to give a BJ to your boyfriend in front of your mom. You're not camouflaging that you BJ. It's just not contextually appropriate.
Right.
I go to Coptic Christian churches. I'll go to synagogues. I'll go to shul. I'll go to mosques and sit with imams and talk. They're not doing anything different than I am at the fundamental level. They're just doing it for the level that they need. Yeah. And if I want to learn to love them, I got to learn that language. For me, it's bullshit. It's not about me. If I don't have a relationship with them, it's not about me. It's about us. And I need to learn their language to have that experience. But I fully give them sovereignty. And if they're like, there's one God and Muhammad is his prophet, you know what? If that makes you a nice person, fuck yes. You do that. You do that twice. But if you say to me, the Buddhism is the way of overcoming them. You've overcome them, right? The Dalai Lama, the 14th incarnation of Avalokiteshvara. Look what's happening on his fucking watch. I don't know how fucking effective Avalokiteshvara is, because there's still 2020 behind us and 2021 in front of us, and this is where we are. And he's still the fuck alive. So either he needs to turn his W-2 and then be like, I suck. I'm sorry, I fucked this one up. Or we need to understand that he's a renunciate who stays at the Waldorf Astoria.
Yeah.
Or flies a private plane with an entourage of security people.
But he's renounced.
Right.
Renounced the normal fucking life. And again, I'm not disparaging him. It's this whole thing we were talking about with fear, is that people, a baseball player will not change his socks if they're on a winning streak.
Right. Well, now that's not fear, that's truth.
Nice.
You've been in Boston for way too long.
but it's like if you're doing something out of fear, you're not doing the thing, you're bartering.
Yeah.
Right? You're whoring. Yeah, I'll do this if you write this is the whole thing. And in your 15th year, when you gave your Christmas away, I'm bartering because that's how you get what you want. And with 5 kids in a family, of course it is, because there's only a finite amount of resources on a military pension. Let's fucking be honest with each other. And so 100%. But the fact is nature doesn't want you to barter shit. You've got to live the way, the process, and if you don't, you're fucked.
And what is the difference between, everybody feels fear. I mean, Taoists feel fear. There's no question about that. The difference is we're trained to take the next step.
Yeah.
You feel fear, but that's okay. You just take the next step and the next step and the next step. And eventually the fear subsides. It never goes truly away, but it goes somewhere that doesn't bother you as much.
Yeah, the vaccine for fear is competency, it's skill. But you can only do that by going through and getting the competency. I think the reason why we're so good with fear is because most of us are born in fear at very young ages. So we just get a head start in dealing with it. When you're a very small mammal and the people around you are real fucktards, it's real hard for you to not live in fear. I started biting my nails when I was 2 years old. I developed a neurosis because I was always terrified because I was always fighting and hostility and abuse in my house, right? Now,
Actually, that's funny because I bit my nails too, my cuticles.
yeah, a lot of them do. And I'll tell you,
Me too.
The reason why 90% of us are this way is because we never got the Disney version of life. And when people try, this is where you're talking about the fraud part of life is Disney ain't real. I hunt. And when one of the people I know was like, I can't believe you're supposed to be this man of peace. I'm like, fuck your peace. What are you talking about, peace?
You killed Bambi? Bambi.
But Lau, wait a second. You are a man of peace. You will leave everybody fucking alone.
But here's the thing. They think peace means the absence of war or violence. That's harmless. That's not peace. Peace is you can even be in war and still choose peace. If you can't be in war, you can't be peaceful. Facts. You're just fucking harmless. There's a difference. But so this person was telling me, I watched Bambi. I'm like, let me tell you about Bambi, you fuck. First off, Bambi was with his mom. Where was his dad? His deadbeat fucking dad ran out on him. Eh? So why the fuck are you over here? His dad's out there probably banging lots, kids everywhere. You're supporting that? And Bambi's fucking mom. She left him alone. Why'd she leave him alone? She knew man was in the forest. She'd fucking probably mama me back so she can go in the rut. Bambi was better off without it. And they just looked at me. I'm like, you can look at it any way you want. I can look at it any way I want. Fact of the matter is, it's a fucking cartoon and it's not in line with reality. If you don't like the way I say it, let's get rid of both because both is bullshit. It's a animated cartoon that taught people animals talk and sing and Hakuna Matata. No, lions eat fucking meerkats, warthogs kill lions and eat them. That's how that plays out.
To talk about the guy with the alligator that you told me that the one word for life is to eat or eat.
Yeah. All life can be summed up in one word: eat.
But the reality is we're all doing the same thing.
Yes.
Right? And this world, the way it's structured is sunshine comes down, that's the energy. Plants take it, somebody eats the plants, somebody eats the animals, and that's the cycle. End of story. We're all eating sunshine regardless of what we're eating.
Yeah, but you've got actinides and lanthanides. They're decomposing and giving off energy and beta decay, and it's all going down to eventually lead, and everything's being consumed and giving off and being consumed and giving off. Eventually, this planet will be consumed by the sun when it goes red giant, and assumed that the sun will then eventually be consumed by a supermassive black hole. Nothing's ever being consumed, though. It's just being rearranged.
Yeah. And even in our bodies, we have things that are living off us, and
They're called in-laws.
and parasites.
But you have a spleen and a liver that's designed to get rid of those things. Like there's designed for all these things. So it's just a rearranging of shit. There's no more shit. There's no less shit. There's just a rearranging of shit. And you're like, but I like this shit in this order. Well, that's nice. You should probably take better care of it and not be so, flippant and presumptuous of that it's always going to be there. Maybe not take it for granted so much and actually love it. Because when it's gone, you're going to be like, oh, I miss it. No, you don't miss it. You missed it ever being there in the first place because you thought it'll be there forever. People want this automated existence where it'll always be like this and it'll always be like that. And it'll never, and it's like, no, no,
Yeah.
no.
Well, it's the Santa Claus, I
But
ask what
that's
I want and I get it.
but Lau, honestly, that's their journey to
Yeah,
understand that, right? I mean, and they either will or they won't. And in the end of the day, at least for me, I cannot speak for me, is those who come to me for help, I help. Those who don't ask for help, I'm indifferent to.
yeah, I forbid any of my students to intervene. If somebody comes to me and asks for help, I'm not intervening in their life. They're using me as a tool for their own intervention. But if somebody doesn't come to me, I don't say shit.
Ever,
I want them
ever.
to, I want them to be that way, no matter how fundamentalist or what. I don't care, because they're, like you said, they're on their journey. That's how it works out.
See, people get triggered with that because I say I don't care as well, but people get triggered by that word. But you're indifferent like nature. And there's the difference. In the American language, I don't care actually is a very strong statement.
Apathy.
Yes.
But yeah, but like, for example, you read the Tao Te Ching, it's replete by saying the Tao is indifferent. So a Tao
Always.
the Tao has to be indifferent. Else, how can you follow the Tao? But again, I have a student. He's up in Canada. He's an amazing guy, but sometimes our languages don't match, and he'll hear me say, "I know you care deeply about people, but you don't care what people think of you. Like, how does this?" And I'm like, "Don't you want anything for people?" I'm like, "Not a fucking thing," because they're going to get always what they need. There is an immortal self constantly in charge and knows everything they need way better than I do. So I know that that's going to be taken care of. I just need to love the shit out of them, regardless of what they do. And beyond that, none of my business. And that's how I can love them so much. And not giving a fuck what they think of me is how I can continue to love them so much. They're free from anything from me. Yeah, that's absolutely, that's the way I can love Arorah like that.
Way of being a teacher, because I'll go back to the teacher that I left. One of the things that he wanted was basically for us to kind of give his soul, our souls to him, like he was, and there was that, and that did to me felt very manipulative and not keeping with Tao, and because and he would actually even say this, but he still kind of wanted, he'd say, when you give someone a gift, so when you're giving someone a gift of whatever it is that you do, then you let it go. It's no longer, like if I give you, if I give you this coaster, I don't care what you do with it. If you give it away, if you, whatever you do with it, I've given it to you. I don't follow what that is. And I think that it's a very wonderful thing that you feel that you give what you give and then let it go, because it's like, like what you said, Arthur, you don't have to save anyone. In fact, it's you said disrespectful to try and save someone.
It's very arrogant to try to save someone because you're assuming you know what's best for them, their path, their life, and you're putting yourself in the place of God, right? Your perspective is so big that you can see what this person actually needs.
And you sit in moral righteousness that, well, because I love them, and because I love them, that means I want the best for them. It's like, you want the best for them, leave them alone. And I'll tell you, something that is a fallacy, it's a logical fallacy, but it's still a fallacy here, is that you're right, giving a gift, but some shit you can't give away, like your personal authority or your personal responsibility. Those aren't yours to give. They cannot be. You can delegate certain authorities, but you can't delegate responsibility. That's yours.
Yeah.
So if, years ago, I was in a particularly bad situation over in the Hindu Kush, and I was in a pit. And that pit was really hard. But on my first day, I was a raging mess. The second day, I got all philosophical and shit because I needed to save mental power. And I thought to myself, all the people who ever told me what a good man is, or what he should be, or what he should do, or what a good boy does, or a right man would do, all of those people, I was like, I'm in this fucking pit, and these people aren't in this pit. For all their laudable claims to somehow be moral paragons of virtue and pillars of goddamn well-adjusted turpitude, I'm in this pit, and they're home doing whatever the fuck they're doing. So why would I ever listen to them ever again? Why would I ever give that authority away? Doesn't mean I can't take recommendations or counsel, but in the end, if I've got to sit in this pit by my onesies, I got to make all decisions by my onesies in the end, meaning I have to take full responsibility and full personal authority, right? This is the duh of the Tao Te Ching, virtue, is I got to be personally responsible. So when people say to give your life to Christ, what do you do with his? I don't really, I don't know. That doesn't seem like a good idea. He never asked me for it. And he's still dead. So like, I probably should do the thing like now, which is like, do what's in front of me. But it's like, like you were saying with this teacher asking you to give away your soul. It's like, it's not yours to give.
Oh, right. Very good. Yeah.
Because they're out of control.
Yeah.
I want certainty, and therefore I'm going to hoard shit to myself. And then I can keep this loophole with death and life. And it's like, Jim Jones tried that. As far as I remember, that didn't work out well for that guy either.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
So Lau, something you said, it really takes me back, and it took me a long time to understand this. But when somebody says to you, good boy or good man or whatever, I found out that it often helps to ask the question, good for who?
Exactly. Yes. 100%. 100%.
Wow.
Right?
That is really a good question. That is really a good question.
Yeah.
Right? Because when I say to my dog, good dog, that's good for me. It's not good for the dog. The dog wants to shit on my carpet whenever he wants to shit on my carpet. Okay? The dog isn't acting natural. I'm forcing the dog to do what's right for me, what's good for me. So when you say to somebody, good boy or good girl, or to kids, you're not complimenting them. You're telling them, well, you just did exactly what I wanted. Thank you.
You made me happy.
Yeah, the people who benefit most from you having no boundaries or sovereignty are the people who push most against you when you try to take them and use them.
Right.
There was a saying, because it's about people pleasing, and proving, but there's a saying that when you stop people pleasing, people aren't pleased. But please yourself, at least you're pleased.
But here's the deal. That's an infinite task. To please someone, right? It's the same as making money. It's the same as being in perfection. It's the same as chasing happiness.
Yeah.
That infinite task can never be completed, right? The moment you do something to please someone, they want a little bit more, and then they want a little bit more, and then they want a little bit more, because the moment they have it, they no longer value it. And since you brought it to them, they figured you have a little more to give and everything.
Yeah.
Right?
It's manipulation. It's you want me to give you the behavior and acceptance, then give me what I want, or I'm going to withhold my acceptance and behavior. And so you're manipulating them by managing their response, and they're manipulating you by harvesting your goodwill and intention.
Exactly.
And then people feel resentful, like, I feel like I was used. You were. You're a goddamn used paper cup. But you're the one who made that.
But sometimes it's good to be used for the right things.
But here's the idea, is that it was a bullshit bargain in the first place, because you told the person, I need your acceptance to be valid. So you invalidated yourself with that very premise.
Exactly.
Just validating yourself. And people do it all the time because, well, I don't feel like I'm enough. Well, what does enough feel like? What does enough feel like? Let's say you felt enough right now. What would that be like? What would you do with it? If you're a painter, but you've never seen the color red, you would go all around the fucking studio looking for red, even though it's right in front of your face, because you've never seen red. It's the same thing with being enough. You're born enough, but if you got indoctrinated into some dogma that said you're less than, you're born to stained or whatever the hell, then you're going to believe that. Now, Arthur's right. Those people are born to that because that's what they need, and that's their journey. And you know what? Vaya con Dios, man. I'm happy for it. I love people enough to let them struggle, let them fall down. I love people enough to let them suffer and be in their pit, because that's what they needed. They created that. Their immortal has a complete control over them. But simultaneously, they're not going to like you if you're not in that, because misery doesn't love company, it demands company. And when you're like, oh, I'm not doing fucktard today, sorry. You're indicting me with your behavior. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm a fucking monk. What do I?
But never enough is one more of those infinite tasks,
Of course.
right? Never enough, right? So what I talk a lot about with people is spirituality isn't necessary to talk to God. It's necessary to know when to stop.
Yes. Yes.
Well, say more about that, Arthur. What do you?
Well, animals in nature, they compete for food and mates. But once they've eaten and once they've mated, they stop because now they conserve energy, they rest, and they need to do other things. Human beings, because of the way we live in our societies, that natural stopping point is taken away from us.
But we
So
need
that's where we get. Sorry, Lau, I didn't hear you.
we need an iPhone 13. What do you mean? No, we need a 13 Williams Cloud.
So basically, that natural stopping point has been taken away from you. And your job on a spiritual journey is to find out, when is it enough to stop making money? When is it enough to stop eating? When is it enough to stop mating? When is it enough to start finding happiness? When is it enough to stop thinking? This is the hardest thing of all that I find, that when I work with people, is to help people to stop thinking. When do you stop thinking?
Yeah.
When do you start feeling? When do you stop feeling and start thinking? Right? When are those natural points in you that were given to you and taken away by the structure that we live in?
Yeah. Yeah, it had to be taken away because content people don't buy shit.
There you go.
They don't consume shit.
Yes.
They want to sit on a porch, drink some lemonade, eat an apple with a pocket knife, and just be, right? The Great Depression proved it. Happiest time in people's lives was the time when they had nothing, so there was nothing to worry about. Families had to be nuclear or you die without each other.
You know, the Soviet Union, it often gets shit upon, especially in the West. But that was the time when the money was taken away from people because, you know, everybody was equal, so it makes no difference. That was the time of insane creativity.
Of course.
The amount of nature, people in nature, the amount of writers, the amount of poets, the amount of artists, the amount of music, ballet, the amount that was created because people no longer needed to continuously run this infinite task of making money. It was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's a balance. It's not like, oh, so Taoists are more communist. No,
that's not what I'm saying.
Right. But this is what people will infer. And the reason why the thing is it's like there's a time to sow, there's a time to cultivate, there's a time to harvest, there's time to shut the fuck up and be in winter.
Yes.
People don't have that because you've got this infinite perpetual motion machine, and it's going to take energy. This is why it's got to be constant consumption. This is why you got to constantly hear the ding, ding, ding to get more dopamine to accomplish more shit, because content people don't consume. They're conserving energy, right? The law of the universe is the law of conservation.
I could hug you and kiss you.
Right, but this is also Wu Wei. Like I wrote an article years ago trying to explain Wu Wei and how it applies to modern times, which is Wu Wei means enough is enough. Gets to a point of enough, not more. More is too much. Not enough is not enough. Not too much makes not enough. Right? If I have, you look at the poor in this country. The poor in this country,
They're like queens and kings.
right? But it's not enough because somebody has more.
Yeah, comparing them.
So yin makes yang, yang makes yin. Too much makes not enough. Not enough will make too much. Whereas the Taoist goes, this is good enough at the moment because that's where it is, and I seem to be fine. Like when somebody would tell me when I was at the clinic, oh yeah, hell, I mean, even as an advisor, people come and they, Lau, I just feel like I think like there's so many problems, and I'm feeling like I'm worried about being destitute. I'm like, you have discretionary time to be bitching to me right now. There's nothing wrong. Real people who are in peril don't have time to sit there and tell you they're in peril. They're in peril. If you have time to sit here an hour of discretionary time to tell me all your bullshit, I know you're fine, sweet pea. It's kind of like if you're choking. If you can tell me you're choking, you're not choking. Because when you're choking, you can't tell people you're choking.
when you can't breathe and you're still breathing, you're breathing. So I want to ask this question, because one of the things we talked about is looking at fear. And I really would like, because you both are such fearless people, which I really admire. What I mean is you live your life fearlessly. But I would like to hear like one tool or one method that when you're starting to feel yourself, have energy that feels like, I'm going into territory that I haven't been in before. What do you do? How do you manage to get into the second place? Because sometimes we can get so caught up in fear. And especially we were talking about, let's just say, you're a parent and your child is on drugs, or you're worried about other people. How do you make it through to the other side?
Go ahead, Arthur.
One step at a time. As I said before, action or motion is the cure, not the cure, but it pushes fear away. What does fear do in nature? Fear paralyzes, right? And paralyzes for a purpose. And it does something else, which is very, very important. When it paralyzes, when you're hiding from a predator in fear, what do? You stop breathing. So it shuts down your diaphragm, right? So this is a very physical reaction in our bodies when fear occurs. And that's why it's very difficult to take a step forward. The way to counteract that is to have a practice of breathing, is to basically pump up this system that it works regardless of the situation. It may not work 100%, but it's not zero. It's actually trying to work. And that trying to work stimulates you back to, I can take a breath, I can take a step. And then at the end of the day, through everything I've been through, it just taught me not to even bother thinking. Thinking ahead about something creates fear. Anticipation creates fear. My imagination makes that so much bigger than it actually is. It's like taking a horrible phone call that you know is going to be bad, but in your mind, it's 1,000 times bad. The sooner you take that call, the sooner you get that shot, the less there is. It becomes, oh wait, that's what I was afraid of? That's not so bad. Because up here is where it all lies, right? So if you take yourself out of this, bring yourself down, make yourself breathe, right? Make the system move and start just taking a step forward. Most of the time it works out great. And you know what? If you're dead or if somebody's got you, well, then you have no problems anyway, right?
It reminds me of in your book Out Last, which I want to recommend to everybody to get and read. It's just every single page. There's something on there that's juicy and great. But when you were out of work and you were sitting at home playing video games and you just said, I've got to start doing something, and then you renovated your house. It was just like you just took action, and that's what it reminds me when you just said that, is that you started doing something physical. You just got out of where you were at.
The best remedy I found for depression, anxiety, and so on, and fear is hard labor. Is do something that shuts this down. When you're doing a repetitive motion with a hammer, with moving rocks, with whatever it is, which shuts this down, you'll be shocked at how good you feel after. And for 3 months I did that, and that's when I had the best idea of my life. I was able to move forward on a company. I was able to build a big company and everything. I would have never been able to do that because I was too much in my head, too much into fear, too much into depression, and frankly, at the end of the day, too much feeling pity for myself.
Yeah.
So hard labor. Sorry, that was a long explanation, Lau.
Awesome. Really good.
I'll continue it. So physiologically, fear is registered by the mesobrain known as the amygdala. So here's the interesting thing about fear. 90% of the fear that you feel has nothing to do with the fear you're perceiving. That's the interesting part. It's actually the 5 thieves, right? They're confusing you. They're stealing reality from you. When like he said, when you feel fear, you stop breathing. And you're over here watching and taking this information. The frontal cortex is not getting all the energy, not getting the blood, not getting the oxygen, because it's all going back here to the part that's, retarded. And I don't mean that in a pejorative retarded.
No,
I mean like
primitive.
Primitive. Right?
Not retarded, primitive.
Well, that's what, well, retard means to move backwards, regress.
Okay.
Evolved, right? Part of your brain. And so when that happens, there's no thought. There's no deductive logic or reason. There's just reactivity. But it starts building and getting worse and worse and worse. And if you feel it in your body, and it is. But why? If you're not breathing, you're asphyxiating yourself. Your body's going, I'm fucking dying. And you're going, oh, that's what's causing me. No, that's not what's causing you. You're not breathing. You're strangling yourself. So the antidote to fear is competence, meaning doing something, skill, right? Repetitive motion, like you said. But it also makes the prefrontal cortex get blood when it's biologically, the alpha and beta receptors on your heart start changing everything around. So all the blood leaves your viscera, it goes to your limbs, your trachea and bronchia open up, so you're ready to run, which is the worst thing you do from a cat tiger, because you're gonna fucking die, because tigers are faster, and they're gonna chase you down, because if you stood still, the tiger's like, eh. But if you run, you're like, ooh, I like this game. Let's kill it, eat it after we kill it, and chase it. So but the thing is we do the antithetically right thing when we're afraid, right? Because fear contracts things. Fear makes things go smaller, right? Like you said, paralyzed. So I was, years ago, I was in Romania. And this was probably 94. So not far after the Iron Curtain fell. However, and people were pretty poor and people were pretty desperate. And I had a pair of blue jeans on because I was an idiot. I didn't know any better. I was like, ooh. And so I was walking around and a guy pulled a pot metal gun on me. And I was like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't feel fear like you would think fear at that moment, because more confused, like, wait, am I seeing what I think? But I had been training with my master so long in terms of these type of things, because I lived in San Francisco Bay Area. Oakland's right there, and Oakland was a pretty violent place. My brother-in-law was shot and killed in Oakland. It was very violent there at the time.
Not anymore.
I think it's gentrified now, but back in those days, I mean, he was shot 487 times at one thing. It wasn't like it was easy. And so my master told me, fear can only be combated in the moment with humor. Because if you're being humorous, this is where the gallows humor comes from. This is where a lot of veterans have gallows humor. It's a literal biological coping mechanism, because the part of you that can think of things being funny is taking resources biologically away from the fear centers. So I looked at him and I looked at the gun and I went, what is this, 1929? Are you Dick Tracy? Who uses a revolver? Does your mom not love you? What is wrong? And I watched the guy's eyes go, which is called nystagmus, which means he had a math problem. I have gun, I pointed, he has fear, he gives me what I want. That's the math. Verbal berating is not generally part of that. And so because he's also afraid too, because that's why he has the gun, he's afraid. And so knowing that he's afraid and I'm not afraid, the differential of powers there, right? This is what 10 years in the temple taught me. So I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, are you not loved as a child? Were you dropped? Did you read too many comics? And he doesn't know what to do. So just gently, because the eyes, when you look straight on when you're afraid, this part is gone. Your peripheral vision is extremely acute biologically. But the straight on, you're almost blind. Just gently, not from the side, not fast, slowly grab the gun, threw it in a storm drain, and just looked at it. And he was just like, he looked at his hand like it was magic, like I was some Taoist sorcerer that he made the gun. I was just like, never works out really the way you think, does it? And now people say, oh, you were fearless. I was fucking terrified. The thing is, and I know both of you with your lives, I don't know a time when I haven't been terrified. So people think when you're fearless, it means you don't have fear, hence less fear. No, I just don't give a fuck anymore about being afraid. That's the only difference. I'm terrified most days. I've died 3 times. I've almost lost my life way more than that. I've lost everything. I've had to start over 1,000,000 times. I just don't fucking care anymore, because I have the competence to know, man, because even if it had never happened, I lived in, some major Sears Tower and Martha's Vineyard, I'm still fucking dead anyways at one point. So the fuck? The guy doing hand jobs for cash or the CEO still in the box. Still in the box.
Wow, there's a reason I call you my brother, man. I could have, if you just said it the most beautiful, beautiful way possible. Like, can I just add one more tiny thing about the humor part? So my wife and I mean, together we've had, very dense, interesting, crazy, insane time being married because of all the things that have happened to us in every sense of the word. And we developed this phrase when we feel fear, or when we understand that life is now going to be transitioning into something, well, regardless of whether we like it or not, it's going to be transitioning into something. So our phrase that we use with each other is, how hard can it be?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I want to say, one of the things I didn't talk about is I went to school. So my background is in acting. And the book that I wrote is about using acting techniques in your own life. And one of the things I talk about there is humor. Because if you see a movie, especially a drama, and you look at all of Shakespeare's, tragedies, there's always a clown in it. And, they say that, comedy is tragedy plus time, right? But that the sooner you can get humor into whatever it is you're doing, like let's say you're an actor and you're putting this performance together, if you don't add humor to it, it's so effing boring. I mean, it's just, humor really is, it opens us up in ways, like, in fact, the best teachers are the ones that make you laugh, right? And those life experiences, the ones that you can laugh at, are the ones that, in a way, you've healed from, don't you think? In a certain way that you've been able to heal from them, if you can laugh at your, what happened.
Well, I think laughter, though, is a byproduct of acceptance. If you can accept what happened.
Yes, exactly.
I lost my parents. I'm the happiest person in the whole world for them. Right? I'm happy my parents are gone. Not because I hated them and it's because I couldn't be here if they hadn't taken exit stage left. So to bring me here and then get the fuck out of the way to go on their path and I go on mine,
Yeah.
and then I can insert and what did I really lose anyways?
But in the moment, in hindsight, yes. But in the moment, you don't know what's good and bad, right?
Sure. But you develop that over time, is what I'm saying. If you go through enough things and you learn to accept it, usually people have to learn acceptance in retrospect. They retroactively. But in Taoism, the two highest practices there are allow and accept. Accept and allow. And so when shit's happening to me, I'm like, I mean, and kind of like you're afraid, how bad can it be? Mine is usually, that's not the weirdest thing I've ever done. I mean,
what is yours?
It's not the weirdest thing I've ever done. One time I got kidnapped and I got zip tied naked to a pole.
In your life, that is so very true. That is so very true.
First thing I said to myself is, it's not the weirdest thing I've ever done. Because of the humor. I'm not trying to be some bravado. I'm not. But I'm not going to, and I'll tell you, one thing I will tell you, and this is a little inside baseball for me, and it may be the same for you guys, but the way I'm built is when people try to get rid of their anger, good girls aren't angry. Okay, good girls don't feel anger, or get rid of their jealousy, or when you try to get rid of shit, you're just amputating body parts. Would you rather have a left hand? Like people are like, don't follow the left hand path. So I should be a one-armed man? What the fuck's wrong with you? How about I keep both? Right? The problem is not anger, it's do you properly apply your anger? If you can properly apply it, it'll be the most beautiful thing. If somebody's depressed, I piss them off instantly. They don't stay depressed. But for me, spite. I am a spiteful bitch. Not towards people, but towards fear. When fear's like, you're not doing it, the first goddamn thing I do is, now I'm going to do it twice, just to fuck with you. Because that's how I'm built. Now, I know a lot of people aren't built that way. You got to find what works for you. But I'll give you a practical one. It's not that big of a deal for some people, but for me, it was big. I went a lot of years and I never had dogs because I just lived a life that was so busy. I don't think it's right to have a dog and you can't be there for the dog. When I was like 7 years old, I was walking home from a friend's house and a German Shepherd, huge, mean, he's a bit bigger than I was, jumped over and he had his teeth right here and he was growling and I was against it. I thought I was going to die. I was 7 years old, but it was there for 20 minutes, 20 goddamn minutes. This dog's over here and I don't know what's going to happen. I was so terrified. So 3 weeks ago, today, I brought home 2 German Shepherds, 120-pound one and an 80-pound one. And the first 2 nights, I could feel all of that. I mean, I had anxiety. I had cortisol. It was running through me because that part of the brain doesn't have a clock. It 5 minutes ago, 50 years ago, doesn't know.
Exactly.
I broke out. I didn't sleep. And I was literally 6 inches from them. I slept on the couch and had them on the floor next to me. They would put their face right next to me in the middle of the night just to see if I was doing okay. I could feel the sweat. I could feel the terror. I don't give a fuck. You have to call my fucking mom because I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna feel fear today. But now me and those dogs were as close as, two thickest thieves. But I was terrified. I just don't give a shit if I'm terrified anymore. Because when you've been terrified so much, you're like, fuck it. I don't get mad at being happy. I'm not gonna get mad at being terrified. Fuck it.
I love it.
I love it.
I love it. In my mind, you took action and that action got you through it. Or you could have stayed paralyzed and kept that for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't even remember the dog happening.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Just one day I woke up like, I need dogs. And then they were like, well, you want to go to the shop? No, I need specifically German Shepherd. Like I couldn't get any other dog in my mind. And then that night is when I remembered and I went, oh, fuck.
Wait, so when you were over my house, did you have a problem with my dog? I mean, was that an issue?
Thought about it because your dog was so docile and simple.
Okay.
But and apparently at that time in my life, when I was at your house in LA, it wasn't ready for that. It's for whatever reason, 3 weeks ago, I was ready for it. And it's funny, the dogs I was looking at getting are not the 2 I got. The 2 I got, they were just like, oh, these are the 2. And I was like, oh, wait, but then being in Dallas, I go, I fuck it, apparently these are the 2 dogs. Okay. And I didn't question it because I've got enough bruises on my ass and knots on my head to know, just go with it. Just fucking go with it. Trust
Enough
me.
bruises on your ass, right?
Bruises on my ass. And yeah, exactly.
I love it. I love you guys. I really, we need to finish up here, but I just want to say thank you. I love how real you guys are. It gives me so much hope to just be honest and real in my life. And thank you for your journeys. Thank you for, giving so much of yourself. And I can't wait to talk to you again next time. So be blessed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Arorah.
All your pretty cards.
Yes, of course.